Good afternoon, everyone. I see people beginning to populate the room here. I apologize in advance. We just had a very exciting visit from the postal delivery guy, and my dog is a little excited. So you might hear a little squeak in the background as we get started here. My name is Gina Davis, and I'm an education program specialist and PD coordinator with the Maryland Department of Labor. Today we have a wonderful presentation that I sort of egged Joy and Denise into doing for us. So thank you, Joy and Denise, for stepping up to the charge. If while we're waiting, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat box and let us know where you're joining us from? We'd love to see where you're joining. Virginia, hi. And also, if you guys can remember, the first two people did a great job, but make sure you're addressing all panelists and attendees that way that your peers can read your responses as well.
Hey, Sergio.
Oh, Sergio's here.
From Argentina.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
There's Janet. Brenda.
Hey, Brenda.
Seeing some of your fellow ISs.
Yeah, we're just giving a shout out to our Chesapeake College peeps.
Well, and then while we're doing that, as is expected, if you guys can take the poll so we can see what your role is. And if you are in an IS role, this is a wonderful presentation for you to sit through. I mean, you can also be an instructor, somebody in another position, but if you're driving or participating in PD decisions within your program, this is going to be a really wonderful conversation. Hi, Elaine. Okay, great. So I'm going to share the results with everyone. So a number of IS and program administrators, and other stakeholders. So great, wonderful. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. As this is now our third day of the Virtual Training Institute, this specific conversation is going to be about what drives the decisions around PD at Chesapeake College. I'm in 3 roles. Yes, Sherry, that's cool. I really welcome everyone to really take charge of that chat box. If you have a question or anything that you need assistance with, please feel free to put it in there and we'll do our best to answer your questions. But without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Joy and Denise and enjoy.
Thank you, Gina, very much, and welcome everybody. I'm Joy Messick. I'm the ABE GED Instructional Specialist for the Adult Ed program at Chesapeake College.
And I'm Denise Kline, and I am the ESL Instructional Specialist with the Adult Ed program at Chesapeake College. And welcome everyone today. We're glad you're here.
So just a few things before we get started. If we're going too quickly, because we're material, so we might get on a roll. If we're speaking too quickly, please just type an S in the chat box and that'll cue us to slow down a little bit. If you have any questions, we have built in places where we will be asking you what questions that you have throughout the presentation and then again at the end. So please save your questions for those times and we'll be using the chat box for that. And I think everyone's already muted, so that's taken care of. So a little bit about Chesapeake College. Our main campus is located in Y Mills, Maryland. We have a small satellite center in Cambridge, Maryland. We serve 5 counties on the Eastern Shore: Caroline, Dorchester, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Talbot. It's a very broad geographical region. We provide ESL, we provide adult basic ed, and we provide high school equivalency education and training, as well as other things as the needs arrive. We have about 1,800 students that we serve annually. That number is a little smaller this year because we all know why. And we generally maintain a pool of about 40 or so instructors. So that's us. Well, Jean already took care of this one for us, so we can move right by that. So this session, we're going to be showing you how we created our training and professional development plan. There was a lot of research. We collected a lot of data. We did a lot of research on resources and put together what we hope is a very effective and individualized training and professional development model. So Denise, would you like to talk a little bit about the background of this?
Sure. So to give you a little bit of idea of a background of our program and why Joy and I kind of put together the PD plan that we did. Prior to 2016, we really had kind of two sides of the house. We had the ABE side and we had the ESL side. And professional development was conducted separately. Trainings were conducted separately. Teacher orientation was conducted separately. And I actually, and Joy was teaching at the time for GED. I was teaching at the time for ESL. And we had not met one another. So in 2016, Joy and I were both hired as instructional specialists for the program. And she and I met, and we decided that one of our main goals of the program was to bring both sides of the house together. And we felt that our strengths and the best way we could do that was through professional development and teacher training. So we decided to combine the program because there were so many similarities within PD that were needed on both ESL and GED. So we worked really hard to kind of create that sense of community between both sides of the house. And at present, we now have a combined program with a joint program for professional development, which we're very excited about, and which that's what we're going to share with you today.
However, of course, we have this diverse pool of professional people that we need to train and provide professional development for. We had at that time a large number of new hires, particularly in ESL. Poor Denise was very busy at that time. And there really was this split mentality between ABE and ESL, where, we're over here and they're over there. And so that was one of the things that we didn't really, Denise, we didn't like that.
Right.
Because we're one program, the lesson planning and the standards and, all the things, is the same on both sides of the house. So we were like, how do we take these people and create a training and professional development that will promote the idea of that we're one program and that will fill the needs, the training and PD needs of all of these instructors that have these, different backgrounds and different experience levels. And then of course, the number one goal is how do we use all that to improve our learner outcomes? So we have a little chat box question for you. How do you or your agency decide what professional development topics are chosen for a particular fiscal year? If you're an instructor, are you given the opportunity to choose any of your own, or are you provided with all the training in PD?
Right. So we're seeing teacher request is one.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Instructors are provided with training.
Okay. Anyone else?
Needs
PD
assessment.
Plus analysis of observations. Okay.
To address an immediate need. Teacher input, program requirements, best practices.
Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah.
For our academic coordinators provide the topics. Very good. Independent study provided by the program. Okay. Very good.
Okay, very interesting. Well, that's exactly.
Teachers are given our PD, instructor interest and program requirements. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Okay. And I know some of you, I noticed, are maybe from different states. So when we're talking today, of course, with Joy and I, we're going to be talking to you about, program requirements from the state of Maryland. But I'm sure that you will find some similarities and ways that you can adapt it to your own program and to your own state requirements as well. Okay. Team Aztec Burlington Zoom. Maryland driven ABE framework. Yes,
Oh,
very important.
yes.
CASA's updates, digital literacy, technology need teams, Aztec and Burlington, teacher surveys and teacher requests. Very good. Great. Oh, great information. Thank you all very much. Workforce development requirements and what works for students. That's very important when we look at, things, our classes are student centered. And ultimately, what we're doing with teachers is so that we can keep going with that student centered learning. Perfect. Okay. Sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds like, we all use the same basic elements to determine our training and professional development. So good, we're all familiar with that. So of course, there's the grant required data and program data. And as tools, we used the WIOA topic identification worksheet that we receive with our grant, classroom observations, and in-house professional development evaluation. And we really look at that feedback that the instructors give us, and we try to always incorporate that in our future sessions and planning.
Right. And for those, I don't know, again, in other areas, we are 100% virtual at this point, and questions was asked about classroom observation. We are continuing our classroom observation, even though it's virtual. So Joy and I we do attend their classroom. We go into their classrooms before and after professional development. We pop into classes. So we are continuing to do that throughout this process. So I know that had been asked in past sessions, so.
Okay, so really, one of the things that predicated this training and professional development template that we created was in our research, we found the teacher induction and toolkit for adult educators. And we were like, now we have some guidance on what we should do and how we should go about this.
So let me ask a real quick question. In the chat box, if you could type in, are you familiar with the induction toolkit, or is this new for some of you? Just take a minute to write that in the chat box. While they're doing that, Joy, we can keep going, but it'd be good to see.
Okay, yeah.
Like who has that.
And so we found this in, it's a links course, the Introduction to Teacher Effectiveness. So this tool was within that course on links. And one of the most interesting takeaways that we got from this was a quote on page 1 that beginning teachers need between 3 and 7 years to become effective teachers who maximize student performance. And that idea, seeing it in writing, we always suspected that from our own experiences and how much we learned and grew each year in our practice. But actually seeing that written really had an impact on how we decided to move forward with our training and PD, because you can't expect a first-year teacher right out the gate to know all the things that there is to know. And so this really sort of influenced the way we proceeded.
Right. And what's great about this, and many of you have mentioned in the chat box that this is new. And what's really wonderful about it is in the same way that we create a pathway to learning for our students, this particular toolkit allows you to kind of create, as this next slide shows, it really helps you create a pathway for your teachers through professional development and through teacher training, and in there it relies heavily on mentoring. It relies heavily on helping them kind of build their own plan, and and like Gina says, it really is a great baseline for understanding what they know and what they need to know. So if you have a minute, go to the Links website. You can check this out. It's been a really great resource for Joy and I.
Yes, in part, you can see the elements here of the teacher induction pathway. And so as we were researching this, we realized that we should use this as a roadmap as to how we execute our training in PD. So we took the elements of this induction pathway and kind of used it as the process. And it's really, it's not, here it shows like kind of a straight line, but it's really not, it's cyclical. And so we take these elements and we use them not only in the training that we offer, but for our professional development sessions. And the reflection part, that's kind of what our evaluations kind of serve that purpose, because it allows them the instructors to reflect on what they've learned and how they can use it in their practice. So that's a very important element. And then it just keeps right on, the circle keeps right on turning. So also within this teacher effectiveness module are the adult education teacher competencies. So we decided to use these competencies. They became our goals for this framework that we developed, and they became our objectives for our training in PD, which we will talk about on the next slides.
And so when you get these slides, let you know, Joy, we've put the link at the bottom to these competencies. So I know these presentations we put up, and so you'll be able to access the links as well. And we can also get it into the chat box for you.
Okay, so Denise, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So the first, so at the top, you'll notice at the slide, so this is the first competency that we looked at, which was to identify the knowledge and skills expected of any AE instructor. So as you know, AE instructors come in with different backgrounds from different areas. Some come from business, some are K-12 teachers, some work specifically in ABE, some people. And the question is, we have anywhere from 30 to 40 instructors, depending on how many classes we run. So that's how many we have at the time. So when we're looking at identifying the knowledge and skills, we looked at two areas. So we looked at the Maryland framework of professional standards for teachers in adult ed, and we focused on standard 6, which was to maintain a knowledge base and pursue professional development. And I really like that idea of talking about pursuing PD. So as ISs, we look to develop PD, but we also encourage our teachers to also seek it out and talk to us about what they want to do. So the idea of, so how can we, Joy and I look at how can we help them access, professional development for their own professional growth, and how then do we provide them with that support and help them in developing their professional development plan for themselves that helps them meet not only the program's goals and objectives, but what their personal professional development goals are as well. And then we also looked at domain 4 within the AE teacher competencies, that again, pursuing professionalism and helping them continuously build their knowledge and skills. So how do we then create content areas of and content, and also helping them pursue that knowledge that they then need to be able to help our students and help them, attain their goals. So just that's the first thing. So we kind of looked at these two standards and domains as kind of the basis for how we wanted to develop our program. So then the next slide. So then we looked at the next one, which was determining the training and professional development to acquire the knowledge and skills needed to be an effective adult ed instructor. So these are the different things that we use. So we use the toolkit. We look at teacher competency. There is a self-assessment within that toolkit that we had teachers use at our Welcome Back PD last year or the year before. Times are starting to run together. So it's kind of hard for me to know what year we're in at this point. But anyway, last year, the year before, we had them complete this self-assessment to kind of help them kind of guide where they wanted their professional development to go. It's a very helpful tool. We also looked again at the PD standards for teachers. Our class observations are very important. And Joy and I, we do them often, and we go in to see, you know, are they using the information that we teach within the PD or that we provide within the PD. And then also the teacher surveys on the learning topics, which we're going to show you later what those topics are. And we have teachers complete surveys on what their comfort level is on those particular topics.
And that's my cue.
That's your cue.
Because here, this might look familiar to you if you're part of a program in Maryland. We get this every year, and we were asking, when we surveyed the instructors, we created a survey in SurveyMonkey and sent it out to them. And at that time, prior to this, we were asking them, it was kind of like rating us, like how were we doing in providing this? But somewhere along the line, the language changed to us polling the instructors on their understanding of the WIOA priorities. And that was sort of like a game changer, because I mean, yes, I do want to know if I'm doing a good job, but it's not about that. Are we presenting the information in a way that they're learning what we're teaching, and then also interested in continuing to pursue education in that area? So that was very interesting to get that, to get those answers from that perspective, from the instructor's perspective of what is their understanding.
Right.
So we use that chart to synthesize the data and kind of target those areas that needed improvement and as identified by the instructors. Right. And so then we felt, well, look at all these learning need topics. These indicate what should be part of just standard adult ed training, in addition to our local program training. So this was also a game changer, which you'll see later when we show you the template.
Right. And one thing too, we noticed when we sent this survey out to teachers, just as in a classroom where you have to differentiate instruction to your students, you know, when Joy and I got this survey back from teachers, it became really obvious. You know, some teachers were very comfortable with certain topics. For some teachers, it was very new. So Joy and I were like, how do we then take these topics? Because I don't know about you, but sometimes you take a certain topic over and over again, and you're like, I've taken this before. Why do I need to take it again? So Joy and I were like, how do we make this information relevant, not only to our new teachers, but how do we make this information relevant to our established teachers? And that's when we started showing you our planning tool. We looked at that and how do we basically make it relevant to all of our teachers, regardless of their experience.
Yes, and that's a very important element, Denise. I'm glad that you remembered to bring that up. That was a very important factor because, you know, we know if you've been in adult ed for a couple of years and you're like, oh God, if I have to listen about, you know, how to use CAS's competencies one more time, you know, like people get stuck in these mindsets. So we were like, how, like Denise said, how do we train the new ones while keeping it, you know, it's training for the new ones, but it's PD for the experienced teachers. And how do we accomplish that? So again, referring back to the adult ed competencies, we decided to offer a structural approach to determine the knowledge and skills that all of the instructors need. And this was sort of the formula that we came up with. And this, at the time, of course, we were still doing in-person training and professional developments. So we were able to give the instructors 10 hours of face-to-face in-person professional development. Those topics were chosen based on the data from the grant and classroom observations, basically what the need was. we created 3 different tiers of training based on the instructor's experience. Denise, God bless her, created a course catalog of online classes with the titles of the courses, descriptions, how to access the courses. And then they got an additional 8 to 10 hours of strictly online training.
Right. And from a communication standpoint, part of the structural approach was, Joy and I planned this, and we made sure teachers had this at the very beginning of the fiscal year. So they knew the PD schedule. So if our fiscal year begins on July 1, teachers had in their hands a schedule of professional development topics that were going to be done. Like, we were able to schedule that. So they knew what the PD plan was going to be for the entire fiscal year. And they could add that to their calendars, and they had the information. So again, it just kind of, and we did newsletters to help them, so the communication piece was just as important with this structure as the PD structure itself.
Oh, absolutely. Because I remember as an instructor, it would be like, oh, all of a sudden we have a PD next week. And you're like, what? Really? I didn't, it wasn't as intentional as we felt that it needed to be. And so that's definitely something that Denise and I have really worked on, is having things be planned out and intentional for our instructors. And that alone, having a schedule like that creates structure for them as well, because they can plan ahead.
Right. Because, our instructors are part-time. A lot of them have full-time jobs outside. So it's really important that we be cognizant of that and make sure that they have the information they need, so they can make decisions for what they need to do. So.
Okay. So here we just wanted to show you some of the resources. We don't just use links, even though I would say, I guess they're our core curriculum. They have so many outstanding offerings that we take advantage of. But there are many, many other resources out there, and these are just a few places that we get even ideas for. We know this year, the ABE framework is new. We're going to be working on that. The digital literacy framework, those are things that came to us from our state. And so we always keep a close eye on that, but we get emails all the time, offering different webinars and offering different things. So when we see something that we think is relevant to our instructors, we make sure to pass that along to them as an option. So we kind of wanted to pause at this point. We've given you a lot of information and ask what questions do you have, if any, at this point before we proceed?
Right. I am seeing in the chat box. So here, how do we offer or ensure professional growth in the areas specific to ESOL, such as linguistics, second language acquisition, methodology for ESL instructors? Particularly if they, wait a minute, let me keep going. Oops, sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. Oh, wait a minute. My little button went completely crazy and just took me all the way to the very, very top of the chat box.
Yeah, Susie is asking professional growth in areas specific to ESOL. Well, you'll see that a little bit later. We've created like a core curriculum, and then we've created like a targeted curriculum for GED and ESL.
Right. And also when it comes to, we do a unified, for new teachers, we do a unified orientation with them, but then Joy and I then meet separately with new teachers and we do mentoring with them, and we do training specific to GED and ESL with them separately. So we still do have to do some separate training because, but we try to do the core stuff together. And then we make sure we meet with them separately to make sure they get what they need for their particular area of study with students.
And a lot of our instructors come to us with backgrounds in education, special ed, K-12, ESOL even.
Yeah, TESOL
Um,
certification, yes.
And that's even where the individualization occurs, is we look at our teachers' backgrounds, and if they already know, for instance, if I have a K-12 teacher, I know that they're familiar with the Common Core standards. I can introduce them to the college and career readiness standards, but they already know how to use those standards in their lesson planning. So as long as I see a lesson plan that reflects, that shows me that they know how to use the standards in their planning, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time, training them on how to use the standards, because they already know. So those are things that we do take into consideration.
Right. Joy, one of the questions in the chat box says, do you do anything with different learning styles and students who had prior special education services?
We do training with our instructors. There's the Learning to Achieve, which is on links. I think they're taking down some of those modules. Hopefully they'll be replaced. But Learning to Achieve actually has some very valuable modules for the instructors to then have the tools they need to teach these students. And actually, some of our instructors do have special ed backgrounds.
Right.
Of course, as adults, we have to refer them to doors or to another agency if we can't serve their needs. But we do provide that kind of training and have those tools in instructors who know how best to teach these students.
And we're also, we're very fortunate in our program that the coordinator of our Title IX and ADA department at Chesapeake College also works for us as an ESL instructor. So if we're finding that we're having, if we have students in the classroom that may be having she is a wonderful resource. So we can also talk with her, and she's been valuable. So we're very lucky in that respect with our program.
Yes, and very often our instructors, we provide them the tools to do learning styles assessments with their students, to do multiple intelligences, which I think is the new hot button term for that, because it's very important to them as instructors to know that about their students. So a lot of times the instructors take the initiative to do those things on their own, because they already, in their data gathering for how they can best serve their students, that's something that they want to know.
Right. And of course, our teachers, we don't ever diagnose a student or if they're having learning issues, but, we talk with teachers frequently and they'll say, okay, I'm noticing this with this particular student or that. And then we can, also refer them to certain resources that are on campus. Again, we do have that ability to talk with one of our instructors who has, knowledge in that area. And so we, to kind of help them if they need certain resources or what we can do to help accommodate that student within the classroom.
And most of our students, if they do have learning differences, they self-disclose because they know the things that they struggle with, and they will often volunteer that information to the instructor so that the instructor is aware of the issue and then can accommodate the student as best as they can through differentiated instruction.
Good questions. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So we've we've gathered and analyzed the data. We've shown you how we did that. We determined the need. We researched different modules and different strategies. We researched our resources, and now we had to come up with the actual plan. So what was that going to look like? And ta-da, this is what it looks like now. But what you're seeing, this is actually like version 4.0. I think we've started doing this in what, 2018, 2017, 2018.
2018, yeah.
And so each year we have adapted it, updated it and adapted it to reflect any changes or additions, anything new from the state, any local program needs, or, you know, anything that has arisen as a need. We have the ability to adjust this. We specify the total amount available to each instructor each year as our budget allows. So we do give them face-to-face hours versus online training hours. These hours are interchangeable. If an instructor for some reason has to miss what we're still calling face-to-face, but of course it's virtual through Zoom, if they can't make it to one of those sessions, they still have those 2 hours in their bank. So they can take that 2 hours and use that for other training. So even if they miss something, they can always make that up. Those hours are available to them no matter what. So you can see here, I hope you can see here, I hope that's big enough. Like Denise mentioned earlier, and this is the one for this fiscal year, we have planned out all of our PD sessions for the year so that the instructors know. And so that's at the top. We have a new instructor training area that is for everyone, ESL and ABE. And then our tier 1 is what we consider to be our core curriculum. And I'm sure everyone has heard that Lynx is retiring about 13 courses. And that's gonna be probably our next thing that we concentrate on, is how we're going to fill that gap that's gonna leave. And those ones that we use currently are italicized. So we use those and we're gonna have to come up with some way to, like I said, fill that gap. So there's the core curriculum that everybody needs to do. And then the second tier is the more specific training, whether they're going to be an ABE instructor or an ESL instructor. And a lot of our instructors are both. Yeah. And then we have the tier 3 electives. So once they've gone through the new instructor training, the core curriculum, and their targeted training, then they have the ability to choose their own training. We also give them what the topics of our face-to-face meetings are going to be. We don't necessarily assign a date to the topics because we don't really plan that far ahead, but we know what we're going to do and we know when we're going to do it. And we want them to know these are the topics that we're going to be addressing this year. And so they get their total hours, and they're all ready to go for their training and their planning for the year.
Right. And really quick too, if you look at the plan too, you'll notice, again, looking at, you know, tier 1 is, we looked at the different tiers of like, what would a new teacher need within that first time period? And then you move down to the tier, and you'll notice once you get to tier 3, you look at more topics, like Joy was saying, they're more broad, because at that point, you know, a teacher's been with us longer than 3 years at this point. We consider them more established teachers. And so we're looking to see, you know, what do they need to know at this point? So we can then offer things like study circles, or we can look at PD with them in a different way. They're also starting at this point, they're our mentor teachers. They're who we connect our new teachers with at this point. So you notice we added mentoring as part of this. So we talk with them about mentoring. So again, you'll notice that things get very specific at the beginning, and then topics get more broad as they move up, you know, the tier levels. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to kind of break this down a little bit for you, so that you can see actually what we've done. So we took the learning need topics, and you can see that's part of our new instructor training. We have the data quality and collection. assessment administration, and standards-based instruction all kind of subsumed within these two modules. And of course, the test results and reports, the module 4 is new. Cass has put that out new this year. So we added that so that teachers coming in to the program understand the importance of using these CASAS competencies and how to use them. And of course, you see that they always have mentor follow-up available to them, whether that's another instructor or whether that's Denise or me. Sorry, my cursor's jumping all around. Okay. And so the core curriculum, you can also see here where it meets these learning need topics. If you look through the Introduction to Teacher Effectiveness modules, you'll see that it's all about adult learning theory. So that module, those modules fulfill that training. We have the Learning to Achieve Professionals Guide to Learning Disabilities. And of course, that is a learning need topic that we need to address consistently in their training. So we designed this intentionally to fulfill all of these learning need topics and to really kind of minimize any of those training gaps, because that was something else that Denise and I noticed as we came in as instructional specialists, because we're like, well, we know what we know, and we expect everybody else to know what we know at this level. But then once you really get in there and you start doing observations and looking at lesson plans, like it kind of started becoming obvious, like where some of these skill gaps were. And that's also something that this core curriculum does, is that, you know, for instance, I was observing one teacher's class, and she had been teaching GED classes for corrections for ages, but now she's come to us, and I sat in on her class, and I was like, you know what, this was a great class, great lesson. I recommend that you take the contextualized instruction module so that you can incorporate that in your planning.
Right.
So we can kind of diagnose and prescribe as we see the need. Is there anything else you want to say about this, Denise?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we also, when we're looking at our face-to-face classes, what we try to do is incorporate information that teach within the links trainings and within the online training, to incorporate it within our face-to-face. So we may ask us to teachers to please look at this particular module or this particular area of this module prior to coming to class. So we try and create a blended learning type situation for teachers. So we may ask them to look over certain things in a module prior to them coming to the class, so we can then tie our face-to-face trainings with the online trainings that they're working on. So we try really hard to tie that together.
And we'll be talking more about that later as well.
Exactly.
And you can see, this is obviously, well, it's obvious to me that this is a sheet for an ABE instructor, because some of it, the ESL content, this person would be exempt from taking that training unless they were assigned an ESL class. So this is reflective of an ABE instructor.
And we may even have GED, because we have ESL students in our classroom, and so in our GED classes as well. So in second language learners in our classroom. So even though it is listed as exempt, we still may have GED teachers take that because they may be working with ELL students, in their class. But some may already be exempt from doing that.
Absolutely. And that's why, it's this is flexible.
Correct.
This is not something that's written in stone, because it's something that's going to continue to evolve over the years as we use it and as different needs arise.
Right.
And so we're very flexible with the training. Like I said, we take the teacher's background into consideration. their personal interests into consideration. So this is a very flexible thing. It's not like, oh, you have to, this is the way it is.
Right.
Denise and I are not those kinds of people to begin with.
We also find out, and what we found interesting with this is that, for a teacher retention standpoint, this has been very helpful because they feel like, we are listening to them about what their needs are as a teacher and how we can meet those needs. And ultimately that transfers into the classroom, and it can increase student retention as well. So we have found that this to be a very important tool for us to use.
Excuse me. And so for tier 3, the electives, again, we turn to our learning need topics. And so in the tiers 1 and 2, we very specifically say, these are the trainings that we want you to do. But then once they get into their electives, it's the same learning need topics, but this is where they have more freedom of choice to pursue their own professional development. And we have the instructors, they download their certificates as proof of participation. They send them to me and Denise. We submit them to our MIS, who puts the information into LACES, and she runs a report on all instructors at the end of the fiscal year, so that we can, what's the word I'm looking for? We reconcile. That's the word I'm looking for. We reconcile their planning sheet with what they've done throughout the year. And that way we can say, well, look, there's still this module available to you. This is still available to you. And then we give them a new template for the next year. Did I just go backwards? I'm not sure.
I think this is where this was in.
Yeah.
This one twice.
But I have different notes. But as I was saying earlier, where we can kind of diagnose and prescribe, it kind of, we look at lesson plans, we do class observations, and we have the ability to do that. And that provides a means of differentiation for our instructors. So just like we want them to do that in the classroom with their students, we try to model that with them as well, and give them those options.
Right. And to go back to the point too, is just as we, we want our teachers looking at, that their lessons and that their classes be, standards based, and research based. Joy and I do the exact same thing for professional development. So is our PDs research based? Are they standards based? Because that's what we try really hard to do. We really try to model our profession, even the way we do our face-to-face PD. Like Joy and I will create like a lesson plan for the PD for that evening with objectives and what we want them. So we do backward design with our PD. We look to see like, what do we want our teachers to know by the end of this? How are we going to then assess through classroom observation that we know that they're doing it? So we try and model that within professional development, because that's what we expect our teachers to do, right? So that, again, we try and kind of model that for them throughout the PD schedule throughout the year.
Okay, so this is another opportunity for us to pause before we proceed, to ask you what questions you have at this point.
So any questions you have for us? Because we are doing pretty good on time, so. Any questions?
Oh, we all, yeah, okay. Oh, I guess nobody, well, that's great, because the first time it lit right up. So I guess we're doing well.
Right.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and proceed. So now Denise was talking earlier about our methods. And this formula kind of demonstrates and elaborates on what what she was talking about. So this was our implementation strategy. Each instructor has their personal planning sheet, plus the course catalog of online classes. Then we do face-to-face workshops on those topics, and we hope that that's effective delivery. And it seems to be doing very well. And we will, and I have an example on the next slide, but we'll say, hey, we're gonna do this particular topic at this PD. Please read this, or please look this over, or please do this module prior to the session. So even prior to the pandemic, we had established a blended learning model for our instructors, and not, I shouldn't say this, but not really on purpose, but that's how it worked out. And it worked out really well, because they were doing that pre-learning, that's the readiness part of the induction, before they would even come to the session. So for example, just recently, our very last PD, we asked that instructors do the CASAS Module 4 on tests and reports. We sent them the Maryland ABE framework ahead of time, so that by the time they came to the face-to-face workshop, they already had this information. If they had done what they were supposed to, they should have already had some background. And so in that face-to-face workshop, that's where we get them to practice and apply that information. We'll do a little like, okay, here are key takeaways. Now, how do we use this? So we really want to give our instructors that practice time with us, with our guidance. And then, that is our standards-based training. Again, we've hit a very important learning need topic with that.
Great. Okay.
And again, as Denise had stated before, we embed the standards and we model those things in our sessions that we want our instructors to also use in class, just modeling for them how class should be run. And we can never do that enough times, it seems. And it has worked very well so far. The instructor feedback that we've gotten has been very positive and very enthusiastic, particularly new instructors coming on. They're like, oh yes, I love it. They love it so much. We are seeing better measurable outcomes. We have fewer students right now, but the retention is better at this time. So we might have fewer, but we're keeping them. We've changed the structure of our classes, and we've been able to level classes for the first time in history. At the beginning, I said we cover 5 counties, which is a very large region. But now, geography is mattering less and less over time. And we're able to level classes, which has been helpful. And we are still supporting our instructors through formal observations and informal class visits. We do just pop in and say, hey guys, how you doing? And that way we get to talk to the students, and it's a very informal visit versus a formal observation.
Right. And one thing Joy and I did do when everything shut down and the pandemic hit and we had to shut down everything rather suddenly and without warning, we tried very hard. We would meet with teachers. We had open Zoom night on a weekly basis with them. And it wasn't mandatory. It's just like Joy and I are available on a weekly basis. And we averaged 40 plus a week throughout that time. And it was really important that we be there for the instructors and that they come online, and they would come with their problems and they would have sharing time with each other. So we found that really helpful at the beginning. And we back that off now. It's kind of like, we don't do it every week anymore, but we do offer at the beginning of each of our face-to-face PD time for them to talk, because this still is a challenging situation. But in the very beginning, we were with them on a weekly basis for at least an hour, making sure that they were okay and that they had what they needed. And so we thought that was a very important thing to add, especially with virtual, everybody being virtual, and to have that connection with them, because Joy and I just can't just pop into a class and stop in a classroom, we get the Zoom invite and things. So again, just to think about that when, how are you connecting with your teachers? Not only from a professional development standpoint, but how are you connecting with them to still making them feel like they're a community, and adding that into your PD. So, right. So any other questions? Because we are about, it's 1:56, and Chesapeake College people that know, that's my thing. Like, I want to make sure that we start on time and end on time. So any other questions that you have for us? I'm checking the chat box real quick.
And of course, we're always available.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're available.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, it's okay, Gina. I'm going to type my my email into the chat box.
Me as well.
We're always very happy to share. And you can reach out to us anytime with questions or just to chat about things. I did give Gina a copy of the template for her to share with everybody if you'd like to use it and adapt it to your own purposes.
Yeah, you guys are a wonderful breadth of information. So thank you so much for sharing today. As they mentioned, all of our content, the recordings, what I like to call their PD menu, will be up on our website. Don't quote me on this, but I'm hoping before the end of the month, so you can begin to check it out. But as you know, we do have 26 total sessions, so a lot of content to whittle through. I did post a link in the chat box, and I'm going to do it again right now, so that you can give us feedback. What I've been saying in every session is, if we don't know, we can't grow. So for the Virtual Training Institute, we want to make sure that this is spot on in terms of what content that you're looking for and what you need help with. Also, that being said, I know we put a lot of information about links related content throughout this. I just happened to work on links projects prior to my time at the state, so I'm really familiar with the content. But pro literacy, and there are tremendous other resources available. COAB has some as well. So we're happy to recommend things to you. If there's some specific content that you're looking for, I'm always happy to do that. And Peg, I need more PD on designing PD. Yes, that was sort of our goal. That was the point of today. So thank you for summing that up so beautifully. But I thank you guys both so much for doing this for us. It's always well received. So I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and do a better 2021.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Gina.
everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Gina. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.